This might be the reason that's holding you back from getting started with learning to sing. What if inherently I just have a bad voice? Even if I trained for it, even if I worked for it, even if I got all those little details, those little nuances in my technique and I got them down, what if there is still something core to my voice, something fundamentally flawed in my anatomy that would still make me sound bad? Now, this is a good question and one that is worth asking. And so today, I want to explore this with you all, and I want to share how even some of those traits or some of those things that we consider inherent to our voice, it might not be as inherent as you think. Now, real quick, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ivan. I'm a voice teacher who works with students from all around the world over Zoom. And really on this channel, my goal is to make learning how to sing as simple and as easy as possible. And most importantly, just to help you get started. If that is up your lane, consider subscribing wherever you're joining me from. If you're interested in improving your voice faster with less of the headaches, I do have some links down in the description below on how you can get in contact with me or just work with me privately. If you want to inspire our next episode, please let me know down in the comments below what you'd like me to talk about next. Anyway, let's dive in. One of the first things I hear from people is that they think I am tone deaf, right? Maybe I'm just one of those really unlucky people who were just born with this. Now, being tone deaf is actually a real thing. This is called congenital amusia in, scientific terms. And unfortunately, there is no known treatment for this as of now. But the good news though is for most of you who are actually listening to this podcast, it's very, very, very unlikely that you have this, because otherwise you wouldn't really even enjoy music or singing and you wouldn't even be listening to this podcast. But then this brings a question: why do some of us struggle with pitch so much? And for some people, it seems like they've always been able to do it. Now, I don't have a specific answer, unfortunately. Maybe they just grew up with musicians, they grew up with great singers, or maybe they just learned how to do it correctly the first time. Or maybe for some people, it's just a matter of belief. They never thought they couldn't do it. So of course they're going to keep trying, and eventually they did get there. There could be many factors, and it could be a mix of all of these different things. But what I do know is that it can also be trained. I found from teaching countless students all around the world, really learning how to sing is three things. The first one here is just having that basic mechanics or that fundamental skill of just changing pitch. Because if you don't know what it feels like to change pitch, how can you even sing on pitch? And number two is being able to recognize when you're on pitch, or like at least generally in the area, versus when you're not. And believe it or not, this is not an innate skill. Rather, it's just pattern recognition. A lot of times in my lessons, I'll basically just keep calling out for a student when they're on pitch, when they're off, when they're on, when they're off. And then over time, eventually, they start to build their own sense of intuition. And the third key thing that I've found, and this is probably why some of you, after you've gone to karaoke, you're like, oh man, I'm tone deaf, I can't sing on pitch, is that how well you can sing on pitch is often relative to the difficulty of what you're trying to sing. If you're trying to sing this song that requires crazy range, you're kind of moving around, of course you're going to be off pitch at times, right? Even professional singers will kind of slip here and there. And so really the third key thing is finding a very, very nice progression that allows you to keep being on pitch, build that intuition. And often with students, I'll start off with very, very simple scales, sometimes even just a single note, but we gradually progress them to the level of singing again. And so I found that by simply focusing on these three areas, my students sing on pitch better. And this goes to show that being on pitch, maybe some people do have it easier. It's not something that is necessarily inherent to your voice. It is something that can be worked upon and it can be improved through the right training. Okay, but you might be thinking, hey, Ivan, but I can sing on pitch. Pitch isn't the issue. What's the issue is that my voice just naturally sounds bad. It sounds a bit whiny, maybe it sounds a bit dull, maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. My voice just naturally doesn't sound that pleasant. And this is another common belief that we all kind of face. We think that the sound that we have right now, our timbre, our tone, the color of it, is basically what we'll get. And I do agree, part of this is true. Every voice does have its own slightly unique anatomy, maybe like the length of your neck, how wide the neck is, the length and thickness of your vocal folds. All of those things are generally kind of set. But this doesn't mean that the timbre of your voice is inherently fixed. Consider this. What we think of as, the tone of your voice, the color, the timbre, it's really just a catch-all for everything that isn't pitch. For example, often we will hear a voice and we'll describe it as, oh, it's breathy, it's really clear, or maybe it's a bit whiny, it's a bit kind of dull, or it's a bit bright, it's a bit kind of dark. Even when you're straining, this can affect your timbre. I've had so many instances where my student, they're straining, they're really tightening things, they're really overdoing some parts of their voice. And when we can just help them find a freer, sound, a freer technique, all of a sudden their voice opens up. There's a much more pleasant kind of quality simply because it's easier. Now, what I'm trying to say here is for sure, there's a part of the voice that is inherent based off your anatomy. My speaking voice isn't always going to be the same as yours. But this is only part of your overall sound. There's still so many things that are within our control, from how we control the vocal folds, to how we control the vocal tract shape. And so really it comes back down to training and building your technique. And you'd often be surprised how much your voice can change when you're applying correct technique. And it brings us to this next point. We've gone on this journey together. I've said how singing on pitch isn't necessarily something that is inherent. It just needs to be trained. And even your timbre, the general tone of your voice, it also isn't necessarily fixed as well. Once again, just needs training. The question now becomes, how do we train? How do we develop good technique? What even is good technique? Now we can go really, really deep with the technique, the fundamentals. I've talked about this on many, many episodes before. If you're unaware, I highly recommend going to check out episode 129. That's a very, very key episode to start building some of the technique. But one thing you can do right now that is very, very simple is this. On a very simple scale, can you go up and down that scale whilst only changing pitch? What this means is you cannot change the volume. You can't get suddenly louder. You can't suddenly flip into falsetto. Keep the volume pretty steady. And also without changing the vowel, without changing, how we use our mouth to make that sound, and without adding unnecessary movements. I see people, lifting their necks or looking up in the ceiling or doing all these extra things to make it work. Can you just change pitch? For example, go, 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 go. Notice how there's generally just pitch change that's happening. I'm not really changing the volume. Go, 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 getting louder or like even pulling back the volume. I'm generally trying to keep the vowel, pretty similar. Go, 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 not moving it around too much. And I'm not like adding extra kind of movements in order to make it work. Now, I find the better you can get at this very, very simple principle, the better your control is. Because basically, a lot of times when we're singing, we're often adding all these extra things, right? Extra pressure, extra volume, doing extra movements with our body just to hit that note. But when we can really just isolate that feeling of pitch change, all of a sudden, all these extra things can become a choice. And that's what generally frees up the voice a bit more, allows you to sing with more control, more freedom. And this is definitely a work in progress. Even for myself with some of these reps, I'm trying to see if I can get them cleaner each time. So it's not this like 0-1 kind of thing, but generally the better you can get them, the better your voice will feel. So give this simple idea a try. Can you go up and down your range without changing anything but pitch? Anyway, that is all. Let me know if there's anything I missed. If you found this episode useful, please leave a 5-star if you're listening from the podcast, or just if you're on YouTube, like, comment, share. Like that really, really means the world to me. If you want to improve your voice with less of the headache, once again, I'd love to invite you to work with me. Links down in the description below. I do offer Zoom lessons and also some private self-study programs. Apart from that, my name is Ivan. I'm your voice teacher. I'll see you next week. Take care.